All right, everyone, welcome to video 3 for the study guide review. This particular video is going to focus on how to interpret the plate boundaries map. So this is something that we did a group activity on where you were looking at volcano maps, you're looking at earthquake maps, volcano maps and volcano maps are the same thing. So you're looking at maps and you're trying to understand what are the geographical features that correspond with plate boundaries. It's like ultimately what we're looking at. How does the shape of our planet, or the shape of the surface of our planet, change due to where these boundaries are located? So one of the questions on your study guide says, where do earthquakes and volcanoes occur? Well, they always occur around plate boundaries because they are caused by plates colliding and moving around each other. If you look at this map, we've got earthquake activity are these yellow dots, and they're all around our plate boundaries. Most of them are around these convergent boundaries. And that should kind of click to your brain. You're like, oh, okay, convergent boundaries are when we have plates really bumping into each other, right? Colliding. And that collision is going to cause more earthquakes than these divergent boundaries where they're pulling apart. Now, transform boundaries, you're still going to get earthquakes. Divergent boundaries, you absolutely will still get earthquakes. But the big ones happen when our plates, boom, slam into each other. So why do earthquakes and volcanoes always occur near each other? Well, they occur near plate boundaries because they're caused by plates colliding or moving around each other. Yeah. One of the questions is asking about the Pacific versus the Atlantic Ocean. And I love this question because it's so cool to think about how our planet is going to change over the next, it's going to be millions of years. But over the next millions of years, the Pacific Ocean is going to look way different than the Atlantic Ocean. It has everything to do with plate boundaries. So if you look around our ring of fire, right, our Pacific Ocean, Pacific. So it's called the ring of fire because it's surrounded by volcanoes. And that's because it's surrounded mostly by convergent boundaries. So instead of the Pacific Ocean just staying where it's at, remember our oceanic crust is denser. So anytime we have a convergent boundary where one plate dives under the other, this crust is getting destroyed. It's getting recycled back into the mantle. So what we see on this picture here of the Pacific Ocean is these convergent boundaries are slowly shrinking the Pacific Ocean. It's getting smaller on these sides because as this Eurasian plate moves on top of the Pacific plate, it's going to overtake it. The Pacific plate's going to dive under. So what we're going to see is the Pacific Ocean shrinking on the sides and getting smaller and smaller. North America is moving closer to Asia because of these convergent boundaries. Our Atlantic Ocean, on the other hand, this is not so much destructive. These convergent boundaries are destructive. It's destroying the Pacific plate. But in the middle of our Atlantic Ocean, we actually have mostly divergent boundaries. So instead of things being destroyed, we have things being created. We've got magma coming up and pushing these plates apart, which is causing that Atlantic Ocean to spread and widen, creating new crust in the middle. So what we're actually seeing here is North America is getting further away from Europe and Africa because of this spreading of the Atlantic Ocean. So as the Pacific Ocean is getting smaller due to convergent boundaries, the Atlantic Ocean is getting bigger due to divergent boundaries, which is pretty sweet. Yeah. So ultimately, Atlantic Ocean, divergent boundary, it's constructive. Your Pacific Ocean, surrounded by convergent boundaries, is destructive.